The final days of the little newsroom that could. Staff at Newshub still pumping out the news as they pack up, readying to say goodbye. The demise of the institution.
It's the end of the news as we know it.
Along with cuts across other media businesses, spurred pressure on government to step in and take action. Now, finally, enter Paul Goldsmith, pushing ahead with the Fair News Digital Bargaining Bill, a framework for news companies to get tech companies to the negotiating table to start paying for local news content. The bill was first introduced by Labor, but will be amended to include a minister in the process who will decide which tech companies will be subject to the law.
We'll go through this slowly, but the parties of less regulation and the parties of less political interference now are going to have a digital website czar to say what will and won't be able to be included. One person, one minister, with all the power to decide who and how they're going to be implemented. Why the party of less regulation thinks that this is a better idea than what Labor had, who knows? But it's a very, very strange situation that they would create a situation that if Labor had done it, they'd be like too much power for that person, and they've gone and done it. So, but Labor bad.
Minister in the process who will decide which tech companies will be subject to the law.
The primary point of the legislation is to act as a backstop in the hope that negotiations will happen, and it will only become relevant if there's an absence of that negotiation.
That was the last straw for ACT, which has invoked its agree to disagree clause. It's concerned ministerial involvement could undermine public trust in media.
It won't save media. It may make things worse.
So I'm not surprised, because they always talk about the market dictating while the market is broke.
Yeah, I mean, love him or hate him, ACT is being consistent. They're actually staying the path. It's the other guys who have fought against this for such a long time who are changing their path. Now, I might think that their changing path is good, right? But let's be fair, that ACT is staying consistent on a position I disagree, but they're staying consistent, and all of a sudden, all this beating up of Labor and all this nanny state from Labor and, we'll get out and there'll be less of this, and then they do what Labor was going to do anyway. That still has to be acknowledged, even if we agree with the law, Chewy.
Yeah, I agree. ACT is being consistent in this case. Consistently shitty.
Yeah, sure.
And it plays into their hands for like the Atlas stuff. It's like it's in their interest if we don't have local media calling things from our perspective. If we're getting our news from overseas, or there's nothing local with money to run anymore, that's good. That's good for the Atlas project. So if David Seymour's squealing, it's good.
All right, we'll keep going.
They always talk about the market dictating while the market is broke, and the government has to support.
Australia and Canada have tried similar things. Meta, which owns Instagram and Facebook, threatened to stop publishing news in those countries.
Well, I'm not going to speculate on that outcome. We'll wait and see how things evolve.
Meta told Newshub in a statement this bill ignores the realities of how our platforms work, their voluntary nature, the preferences of the people who use them, and the free value we provide news publishers. We will continue to be open and transparent with the government and publishers on our business decisions as this bill progresses. Sinead Boucher, publisher of Stuff, says she's concerned the ministerial delegation may be a way to exclude Meta from the process, and hopes the government will back New Zealand companies to get fair value from what she calls the biggest disinformation engine in the world.
It shows that they're willing to get into some kind of game of chicken with governments to see who's really in control and who can sort of exert the most influence.
The government's also decided that television advertising should be allowed on Sundays, which the minister estimates could add $6 million in ad revenue into the market. And is it you or is it me?
You're not in Guatemala now, Dr. Ropata.
It's all of us. Taxpayers could be funding Shorty. The screen production tax rebate, which has helped overseas productions like Lord of the Rings, will become available to local shows like Shortland Street.
I think it's an important institution. It would be great if it
That's not bad.
continue.
Local product.
Our most famous fictional hospital.
Accessing more money or different money.
Well, our political editor...
One of the things I did get confused with in there is she said television advertising on Sunday. I'm sure she said that. That's not right.
Government's also decided that television advertising should be allowed on Sundays, which the minister estimates.
Because television advertising is already allowed on Sundays. So she got it wrong. It's like Christmas and Easter. It's those days. It's Publix. It's where it's not allowed. So it's not Sundays because there is television advertising on Sundays, but it's like Christmas and someone's saying Sunday morning. So you know advertising on Sunday morning? Okay, well, if that's the case, I will stand corrected. But my understanding was it was public holidays, like Easter Sunday. Yeah, like Peter saying, Easter Sunday and Christmas and that kind of stuff. But if there's none on Sunday morning, stand corrected. Yeah, so Chewy, it's an interesting little situation. As I said, it's TVNZ had quite a more cutting part. They pointed to Melissa Lee and they showed some words that Melissa Lee had said about this terrible legislation that Labor was promising, and it's basically exactly the same with one little addition in there as well. And ACT is saying no because they've always said no, and now the National New Zealand First part of the coalition needs to go to Labor and say, will you please support our legislation? And I suspect Labor probably will because it's very similar to their bill.